everybody, and welcome to Bon Echo Blade Reviews. This is my first knife review, so I thought I'd take a minute to explain what I do. So basically, Bon Echo Blade Reviews is a way for me to combine my passion for the outdoors and love for camping with an opportunity to review edged tools such as knives, machetes, choppers, axes, hatchets, etc., and provide those reviews for YouTube viewers, Facebook viewers alike. Typically, I enjoy doing multi-day trips deep into the backwoods. I'm often alone and secluded, left to myself to set up camp, make a fire, do those types of typical survival chores. So this is where I'm required to use any of the edge tools that I bring with me, and in turn, make a great video review. Now, this isn't really about minimalism or survival per se. At the end of the day, I'm just going camping. So let's get to the knife anyway. The Condor Ironpath. Designed by Joe Flowers, this is certainly a large knife. With a blade length just coming in under 10 inches and blade thickness of 5 millimeters, which is just shy of a 1/4 inch. It's made of 1075 high carbon steel, and it's given the typical Condor heat treatment, which in my opinion is done very well. The handle length is just over 5 inches, and with walnut scales, it's fairly smooth, which is actually good for prolonged use, as it doesn't build up as many blisters, but I ended up putting a little bit of grip on it anyway. I find it a little bit more useful that way. If you own or have heard of the Condor Hudson Bay knife, then this is basically the Hudson Bay's older brother. Of course, there's quite a bit more purchase on the handle, as many people have complained about the Hudson Bay. Now, the sheath, which is typical Condor leather, it's, in my opinion, quite good, very high quality, well made. However, there's two types of Condor sheaths you'll see with a lot of knives, like the Pack Golok, the Warlock machete, things like these. It's the snap style. And I find this quite superior over the folded pocket style machete, because what happens is you get it at first, it's nice and stiff. It can even be difficult to remove the knife at times. But over time it starts to loosen up and you think, great, now it's perfect. And then over more time, eventually it just becomes loose, and you know, my Hudson Bay knife just falls right out basically if you were to tip it on its side. And so for that reason, I, to this day, prefer the snap style sheaths that Condor provides. That being said, the leather is still of high quality and it will fit the bill for now. The blade itself comes with a very slight partial flat grind, which leads into a convex grind, but it's very obtuse. I mean, basically this thing is like a splitting maul, the way it comes, and it took me about 2 hours of reprofiling. Let's take a look at it beside the BK9, because this is a good comparison. So as I was saying, it took me about 2 hours just to thin out the edge a little bit. If you put your thumb and your index finger on very carefully on the edge of a knife, it will give you an idea of how thick it is at the edge, and it translates into how well it will bite into wood or what you're chopping or cutting. So immediately, if you're familiar with the Becker BK9, then the Condor Ironpath is significantly heavier than the BK9. However, the BK9 will out-chop the Condor Ironpath, at least out of the box anyway. Why is that? That has everything to do with the type of grind. So as I was saying, the Condor Ironpath comes like a splitting maul. It's very thick. It's difficult for out of the box to get it to bite into wood, and basically if you swing it on an angle like you want to do actual chopping to get into the grain, it's gonna basically bounce off and deflect, whereas the BK9 is a lot thinner at the edge and it will bite and thus out chop it. So basically what this is, the BK9 has that nice flat saber grind, which ends up into a secondary bevel, I guess, and it comes quite sharp, where as the Condor Ironpath, it's going to take a bit of work on a belt sander to get it to produce, like the BK9 basically. That being said, I was very impressed by the Condor Ironpath's ability to split wood. It did a very good job at batoning and splitting, as I used it over many multi-day treks. So using this knife as a machete, as you can probably imagine, it's a little bit big and bulky. I mean, it's not going to perform in the same way as, for example, a Latin-style machete like an Imakasa or Promadoka. It's not really long and thin, so you're not going to get the same type of velocity from the tip. That being said, however, it can get the job done. You know, there's always a way around. And in this particular instance, what I'm trying to do is clear a little spot for me to put up my hammock, as I found two good trees. And so there's just a little bit of overgrown vegetation, some saplings. And so I'm not going to be able to launch this thing out there and clip 2 or 3 of them in one swing. In fact, it's actually much more advantageous for me to get low and kind of chop at the stem at the lowest part, as since I'm putting my hammock up, I really want to clear this at a low level anyway. Now, when you're working this close to the ground as I am here, it's good practice to be conscientious about the trajectory of your swing each time because, as you probably already know, there's often all kinds of hard rocks underneath the soil. Especially in this case, I'm practically on the Canadian Shield here, so if I launch this thing into the ground very hard, I'm likely to chip or bend or just defect the edge in some way or another. So my next job after this is to get a fire started. So for that, I'm going to need to gather a lot of good dry wood in these rainy conditions. But first, I'll have to make a baton. The Ironpath is the perfect size to make quick work of this baton handle, and the ricasso is slightly rounded so that you can choke up on it and rest your finger there nice and comfortably while feeling protected, so you can do a bit more controlled work, do feather sticks, shavings, etc. I gotta say, this knife feels great in the hands with the forward weight towards the end. It definitely makes for a great chopper. Now, typically I use a folding saw to do a lot of my firewood harvesting, but I'll get into that later. So when it comes to batoning and splitting wood, the Condor Ironpath will not disappoint. With a stout convex grind and a thick spine, this knife just eats through wood. I mean, I batoned the heck out of this thing and just punished it, and you know what? I loved the way it performed and it didn't complain once. So in this particular trip, it's worth mentioning that it had been raining all day and 2 days prior. So the conditions were very wet out here, even a little bit cool. And so splitting wood was necessary. I mean, not just to get the right size kindling and wood for my fire, but pretty much all the wood I had, I really had to split open to expose the dry center of it. And I know a lot of people will say you're better off with an axe or a hatchet, and really I can't argue with them. I love axes and hatchets all the same. You know, they're great tools. What I like about a type of knife like this is it's a little bit more packable. I find I can wear it a little bit more easier or put it in my pack. And it just has that convenience because I'm out there doing a lot of hiking, canoeing, portaging, and a large size axe will kind of bang around on the canoe usually when I'm portaging. So I like this. It's also a little more efficient for when I have to do machete style chores. So yeah, as I mentioned before, you can definitely chop with the Condor Ironpath. For small diameter wood processing or bushcraft tasks, this thing is a blast to use. But for anything over, let's say 2.5 inches in diameter, you're going to start putting in a lot of work to try and chop that piece, and you'd be better off using an axe or a folding saw. And because I'm always trying to budget my calories when I'm on these kinds of trips, it's a lot more convenient for me to complement a knife like this with a folding saw. So yeah, I ended up using this knife on about 4 or 5 different backcountry treks, and for a total of about 11 or 12 days, doing my chopping, splitting, tinder, shaving, feather sticking, all those types of typical chores that you would do. And I've kind of grown a little bit attached to it over the time. It's gained a little bit of wear and tear, a bit of patina, so it looks awesome. It's got that experience now. If you plan on doing a lot of food preparation and perhaps a very specific bushcraft project, it might be a good idea to bring a bit of a smaller, more thinner knife, like a Mora or a Nessmuck, something like that. But really, other than that, I think you can get it done with this alone. Now, I think it's worth mentioning again that I did invest quite a bit of time in dialing in that edge to get it to perform the way it does. So if you don't have access to a slack belt sander, Condor makes other products such as the Pat Golok or the Bushcraft Parang, and those typically come sharp right out of the box. I haven't heard too many complaints about that. The ones I received were ready to go as soon as I got them, so that might be a better option if you don't have a shop or some of these tools. Now, price-wise, I got the Condor Ironpath for about 150 Canadian after taxes and everything. Now, considering the leather sheath and the time I put into it, it's worth mentioning that I also got the BK9 for around the same price. So I'll let you be the judge of it. So thank you so much for stopping to watch Bon Echo Blade reviews. If you have any comments or feedback, it's greatly appreciated. And I look forward to making another video soon. So we'll see you all then. Thanks.